In this week's Dorchester Update, we turn once again to the rough transition at UMass Boston, as well as the upcoming celebration of Dorchester Day. To fill us in is the news editor of the Dorchester Reporter, Jennifer Smith. Thank you very much for being with us, Jennifer.
Of course, Chris.
I don't think we should call it a transition at UMass because something that was supposed to happen didn't. So what's going on here?
It's interesting because I think the most chaotic portion seems to be behind us, where the finalists for the chancellorship search, all three of them withdrew last week. So there's going to be a new interim chancellor appointed, Catherine Newman. And so right now everyone's kind of been waiting to see how this shakes out. We're looking at quite a while before any chancellorship search can start up again because of the way this went down. And what I was looking into this week was faculty emails, where the reporter was able to get a hold of a series of email chains involving UMass Boston faculty that were during the duration of the chancellorship search, which really did help highlight how the faculty was thinking about the search. And as you know, of course, the last straw in a lot of ways for these finalists was this very blistering email statement that was sent out by the faculty, and it wasn't the faculty council specifically who had done a vote of no confidence against President Marty Meehan, but the members of the faculty council and members of the faculty put out this statement saying, we don't think any of the three candidates are qualified, we don't think they're a good fit, start it over, bring them back, whatever you want to do. And so what we were seeing in these emails that I was going through was this was a fraught process all the way through, and the faculty really seemed to want to insert themselves.
Read between the lines of it. Was this really about the qualifications of the finalists, or was it about something else?
That's the hard line to walk, really, is I was having a difficult time just trying to parse exactly what the complaints were. You had everything from someone talked too long during the presentation because they only had about an hour or so to meet with the candidates. So there were frustrations over one of the candidates taking 45 minutes for 3 questions. And that was right up there with, like, you know, he seems nice, but not a good fit. And so there were some questions over how much a candidate did or didn't value the public institution that UMass Boston clearly is. There were questions over whether or not they had specific answers to, for instance, how do you feel about the UMass Mount Ida situation, which has been kind of roiling the campus at UMass Boston, as much as, you know, what do you want to do with the Bayside site? So I think they had a lot of very specific questions that maybe they didn't have quite as much of an answer to as the faculty would have liked. But I think the thing that's very important to note here is it's not entirely clear what role the faculty should or shouldn't be having in kind of doing an extra vet of these candidates, which is ultimately what it seemed they were doing. This is what the email showed. They were reaching out to colleagues at the schools that these finalists were from and asking about how they operated the school, asking about other faculty votes of no confidence. So they really clearly did want to be involved in the process, and if there is a 7-month-long search process with a 15-member search committee, which had faculty representatives on it, I think there's a really legitimate question to be asked about, does this set a worrying precedent going forward if a search comes up again? Can they rely or expect that the UMass faculty is going to, or the UMass Boston faculty rather, is going to engage in this sort of thing again and independently reach out?
Well, turning to a very different topic, on Sunday you've got Dorchester Day coming up. For people who haven't experienced this before, what's it like?
Dorchester Day. We at the Dorchester Reporter love Dorchester Day. It is my third, so I'm nowhere near the same level of veteran status as the Foreys, of course. But Dorchester Day it's nothing like St. Patrick's Day. It's this wonderful parade, but there's not really any unruliness. If someone gets arrested, it is a major, major fluke. It's basically a celebration of the neighborhood, which used to be a town, obviously, before it was annexed into Boston. And I know you get out there almost every year, take some pictures, and it's everything from, say, local pride parade, pride floats, local electeds, dance teams. It's basically a celebration of Dorchester all the way up Dot Ave, down from Lower Mills and all the way up to ending around Columbia Road up near Savin Hill.
And this has to be the most deliberately multicultural parade.
It really is, and I think it reflects in a lot of ways just how multicultural Dorchester is. Of course, yeah, it does kind of sometimes get into the stereotypes of just being an Irish neighborhood, but I mean, you have very large Cape Verdean, Haitian, Vietnamese populations. It's really fascinating as you watch the parade go by, as you're as likely to see a bunch of young people from the Dominican Republic waving batons as you are to see an actual dragon walk down the street.
And of course you get Dot Out too, which always has, they always warm up their float for their Gay Pride Parade.
Exactly, it's probably the most bumping float on the run of it is the Pride Parade float.
Of course, there's another annual event. I think this has been going on at least since the 1970s, the Ashmont Hill Garage Sale. How can a garage sale be a community event? You've been.
Yeah.
What's it like?
Yeah. See, this is my other favorite thing. So I think most people, if you're thinking about activities around the Ashmont area, might be thinking of the annual house tour, which has been going for decades, but was recently revived in the past few years, which is basically you wander around and you ogle all of these gorgeous Victorian homes. But it was interesting where apparently in the late 60s, early 70s, the house tours were underway, but they were still trying to find some ways to get people into the neighborhood, to kind of bring people from across Dorchester down into the Ashmont area. And there was this house on Harley Street in Ashmont Hill that was actually occupied by a group of people that were following the teachings of an Armenian mystic. And they didn't speak, but when they moved into the neighborhood and they purchased that house in '76, they ended up hosting a little garage sale. And then what ended up happening was the civic people and the folks that lived around the neighborhood kind of took up that baton. And then 39 years ago now, they started this annual event where maybe around 20 houses, and now it's up to nearly 50. Everyone goes foraging through their attics and through their basements, and they just make this an entire neighborhood-wide yard sale, and it's just a great thing to come out for. They often coordinate with the Ashmont Grill right by the station, so everyone kind of goes and forages and finds some nice hats or something. And like at one point, there was a church pew, I believe. There were entire church pews for sale. And after that, you just go wander down, grab some brunch, maybe head back, and then head away again.
Yeah, this has been a news, and we're talking with Jennifer Smith from the Dorchester Reporter. Jennifer, I want to ask you about one other thing that's new here in Dorchester, is that now finally there's a Wahlburgers. Yeah. It's in South Bay, but it's, strictly speaking, part of Dorchester now. This is a corporate hamburger venture, but there's a very local story behind it. Tell us about the Wahlburgers and what's going on.
Yeah, so the Wahlburgers are pretty much a staple of Dorchester. If you try and list out notable people from Dorchester, the Wahlburgers are pretty high up on that list for a lot of people. And so they've had this chain that had its roots outside of Boston because the brother that was the chef, he did not live in Dorchester. So they've had quite a few of them pop up. They've got kind of staple double and triple decker burgers, and let's not even get into triple decker versus three decker and whether they should know better. But they have very much branded this business into a pretty destination heavy eating spot for people who are kind of from Dorchester and have that affiliation with the Wahlburgers, but also is just a hamburger chain that people enjoy. And so they are finally coming to Dorchester, and it's part of the South Bay Town Center expansion, right by all the big box stores, the Target, the Bed Bath & Beyond. But now, because there's this kind of expansion happening with a new movie theater, they brought in Starbucks, Nike, Ulta, Chipotle, and the Wahlburgers are one of the anchor restaurants in this. So there's been a bit of discussion around the neighborhood about who are the Wahlburgers to Dorchester, and do they really deserve to kind of claim the neighborhood title in that way, especially given the history that they have when some of them were teenagers, including Mark Wahlberg ultimately having committed a racial crime. So the relationship to the Wahlburgers from people in Dorchester has always kind of been fraught, and then you add this additional component to it, which is great. They're coming back, they're bringing in business into the neighborhood, but at the same time, the neighborhood still has a little bit of mixed feelings about them to begin with.
Well, as the article in the Reporter points out, this does not have the Dorchester authenticity of a deli in the Polish Triangle, but
it's very close to it, though.
But
yeah.
The Wahlberg family, they've been sort of giving back. They helped the Boys and Girls Club quite a bit, I think, right?
Yes. So they've, I believe the last count was $4.2 million went to the Boys and Girls Club and the Dorchester branch of it. They remain very active. The Mark Wahlberg Foundation is pretty committed to the neighborhood. And they're frequent faces, so you will see like Donnie Wahlberg come out to things every once in a while. They all very strongly rep the neighborhood, so there is kind of that dichotomy, which is only one of them, I believe, still lives in the neighborhood in the Port Norfolk, Neponset area, and so he, Simon Rios, who's with WBUR, which partners with us, and he wrote the article. He talked to Bob, and he joked, of course, if he had his way, he would have put the burger place 3 blocks down from him. He'd love it to be in the middle of the neighborhood, but you have kind of space constraints and you have ongoing development, and they ultimately settled on South Bay. So even though it's not really the heart of Dorchester, it's definitely Dorchester, and they definitely looked to see if they could put it somewhere else first.
And finally, to see the article and more that's coming out, you've got the website for the Reporter and your own Twitter feed to keep people up to date. So let's have that one more time.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to read any of this or anything else, catch up on .day things. The parade starts at 1, by the way. You can follow us at .news.com or on Twitter at .news, or you can follow me directly at jen.smith.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Of course, thanks.
Jennifer Smith from the Dorchester Reporter.